What?
Just go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because they just...
Yeah.
That's what
All right. All the various discussions we've been having on these general Wednesdays or Tuesdays, I suppose, will help us understand a very important principle that we will be able to draw from Shavuoss, which we are just now finishing off. Today is the last day that is still connected to Shavuoss. I want to discuss, Chassidus explains what was innovated on Shavuoss, because it's this general question that the Torah was given on Shavuoss, but actually everybody I'm sure heard this question that the Oves, Avraham Tzur Yankov also learned Torah, and the Shvatim learned Torah, and even in Mitzrayim the Shevet Levi continued to learn Torah, and that's why they were not enslaved. So what was innovated on Shavuoss? So Chassidus explains it on the Torah level, on the Chassidish level. And I want to speak more on the level that we can more directly relate to, based on the explanations in Chassidus. The first classic question regarding Matan Torah is that the Torah, the Aseres HaDibros that were given on Shavuos, start with Onoichi Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzisicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. And the question is that if the mention of Yetzias Mitzrayim, I took you out of Mitzrayim, if that is mentioned in order to justify giving the commands and saying, since I took you out of Mitzrayim, you have to obey my commands, then it would seem that if you would say, that I am Hashem that created the heavens and the earth, that would be even a more basic justification for it. If he is the creator, clearly you have to obey his commands. Why does it say Asher bara Tzisicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim? So this is explained in Chassidus at great length, very profound. And this will also actually expose to us a great principle that Matan Torah has innovated in the world. The first inyan is that Chassidus says that Asher Tzisicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, that I took you out of Mitzrayim, is really a deeper inyan than Asher Baros Shemayim V'Oretz, that I created the heavens and the earth. This is something which is hard for us to understand, and I want to discuss this briefly. Because it would seem that creating the heavens and the earth, that is really a phenomenal accomplishment. It's Tzisicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim is, yes, it was miraculous and it was breaking through certain natural boundaries, but still, it hasn't compared to creating the world. And yet Chassidus says, no, Tzisicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim is a deeper union than Baros Shemayim V'Oretz. Again, I'm not going to bring the Inyanim as they explain the Chassidus. I'll bring them out the way we can relate to them. The Bria Shomayim V'Oretz, the creation of the heavens and the earth, is referred to as Mila de Hedieta. Lav Urche de Malka Li'ishtoye B'Mila de Hedieta. It is not customary for a king to speak about mundane and simple things. That's Bria Shomayim V'Oretz. A king speaks about more spiritual, more meaningful things than just a creation. What is this about? So the analogy that would help us to understand it very simply is the following. A simple person, when he wants to build a house for himself, an average citizen, he wants to build a house for himself. Even the moment that he recognizes that he has the thought that he wants to build a house, that already means that he has reached a certain level of comfort, of both intellectual, emotional, and financial comfort, because a person does not have a desire for things that are beyond his reach, that are outside of his orientation. And then, so now he has come to the point where he's kind of contemplating building a house. What are the considerations that he has to make in building the house? The first consideration is, what kind of house can I afford? What can I make? What can I do? Then when he gets the parameters as to what he can afford, then he gets the architect to design him a house that will fit these parameters. He cannot go to the architect and say, design me the house of my dreams. And then the architect will give him a house that will be beyond his means. He won't be able to execute it, to follow through. Which means that he cannot really approach the building of the house from the perspective of what he really wants. He has to approach it in perspective of what he can really afford, what he can swing. And then he compromises, he fits into that. If a king wants to build a palace, what are his considerations? He does not have considerations of what he can manage, what he can swing, what he can afford. His only consideration is, what do I want? What do I like? What will represent the truth of my intelligence, of my greatness? That's his own consideration. What will be true to me, representing me? Similarly, when we speak about the creation of the heavens and the earth, we speak about the Tzias Mitzrayim. So from our perspective, the creation of the heavens and the earth, that's a real breakthrough. When we look at a king who built a big palace, our first impression is, how much money was invested in this? Because this is what hits us, this is our first limit. How much resources was in there? The design and the beauty and the glory that's expressed there, that escapes us because it's way beyond us. We are primarily impressed with the low down aspects of this edifice. So when we speak about the creation of the heavens, of the earth, and the earth, we say, wow, this is a real accomplishment. But from Hashem's perspective, creation itself, there are no limits. Creation is not a profound accomplishment. That's not the primary accomplishment in the world. The primary accomplishment of the world is combining world with godliness, revealing godliness in the world. Creation itself, that's Mila de Hedyet. These are words of the simple. They become affected, they get all roused up by the creation. And this is what Yetzias Mitzrayim represents. And this is what the Torah begins with, Onoich Hashem Elokecho asher etzisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. And here is, I'll now start from the beginning and try to explain what this really accomplished. The world belonged to Hashem from the moment of God. From the moment He created the world. And essentially it contained godly qualities from the moment it was created. But this inyan, this point, that it belonged to Hashem, and it contained godly qualities. Creation itself is exclusively a godly quality. This is absolutely true. But the object is not that it should be true. The object is that it should be recognized by the created entity, by the world. You've all learned Chassidus more or less. So Chassidus explains that in order to create the world as a world, God had to conceal and hide His presence from the world. Because if He did not hide His presence, this is called the tzimtzum. Everybody heard, I'm sure, that this term, to whatever extent. If He would not hide His presence, then the world would lack an important ingredient, namely that it is an entity unto itself. It's a real entity. Creation means that you create a true standalone entity. But nothing stands alone. Everything gets its sustenance from Hashem. So Hashem had to conceal this fact that everything gets sustenance from Him. And thereby He created a full-fledged creation, a real standalone existence. In what sense is it standalone? Since it still gets its sustenance from Hashem, it is standalone in its orientation. And in simple terms, what does this mean? As we discussed over these weeks, that when we take an apple, what does it appear to us to be? A tree produced apple. We don't see that this is a godly gift. It grew on the tree. Even if we understand logically, yes, we get it from the tree, but the tree was created by Hashem and given the ability to produce apples. But that's a secondary. The immediate giver is the tree. The Gemara says an interesting analogy that will help us just orient itself in this simple point. The Gemara says that which means that the wine belongs to the owner, to the host, But the thanks is given to the waiter. If you're a guest at somebody's house, and he's got a waiter, he's got somebody serving to the table, and he gives you a glass of wine, whom do you thank? You thank the one who poured a glass of wine for you. You don't turn to the owner and say, thank you for the wine. You say the thank you to the waiter. You sit at the table at the chasana, and the waiter comes and pours some soup into your plate. Who do you say thank you? You run to the host and say thank you? You say thank you to the waiter. This is not a mistake. This is the way it has to be. Because we relate directly to that which is directly in front of us. Surely we understand what the background is and so forth. But nevertheless, we are also real. We are also living in a reality. And we relate to the reality as it comes to us. So therefore we say thank you to the waiter. So therefore from that perspective, when there's a big world and we pick an apple from a tree, we should be saying thank you to the apple, to the tree. Since the tree doesn't hear our thank you, so we are exempt from saying thank you. This would be the basic state of the world. As a matter of fact, this is the view of the world as it is viewed outside of Torah. There is a world. It doesn't have any particular purpose. It doesn't have any particular meaning. If the tree produces an apple, it's just accidental. And if you find that the apple is nourishing to you, that's also accidental. And one has nothing to do with the other. It's a world. It's a standalone entity. Each thing is alone. This is essentially was created at the very start in the beginning. This means he created the world. It can be said that the world lived, so to speak, existed at this level up until the sixth day of creation. There were a whole bunch of things, and each one was an entity unto itself. The sixth day, on Friday, Hashem created animals, and then he created Adam. And when he created Adam, the first thing he said to Adam was, it's right there in the sixth day, in the Friday description in the Torah. It's not later on. It's right there as part of the creation. Hashem said to Adam, behold, all of this vegetation, everything that I've created, I have provided for you to eat. That's right there in the creation. This, as a matter of fact, concluded the creation. Up until that time, the creation wasn't complete. This last statement by Hashem to Adam Orish, that I have given, I've relinquished to you all the vegetation as food, this completed the creation. This was the first stage, or rather the second stage. Because the first stage was when everything was independent. And then everything became united together as serving Adam. And now the world already assumed a certain form, certain meaning. Yes, there are a whole bunch of things, but there's a center. What they serve, what they're there for. So after having said that, the world changed completely. It had a king, it had a center. It wasn't the same world as before. Subsequent to that, there was another transformation in the world. Because still at that time, Adam and the animals were on par. In the sense that Adam ate vegetation, and the animals were also provided vegetation. Because it says that in the same parsha. That Al-Chayes, he also gave food these vegetables. Then afterwards, when the flood came, and the whole world was destroyed as a result of the flood, saved was only Noach, and that which was with him in the table, in the ark. Which means that the whole world survived at that point. What was left in the world? Only that which Noach saved. Which means now the whole world exists on account of Noach. So then, because that Noach saved the whole world, because the world exists on account of Noach, then it was time, a new transformation. Another stage in the world. What was the other stage? That the animals are also subservient to Adam. And this is when Noach was permitted to eat animals.
But before this, animals weren't subservient.
No, before this he was not allowed to eat animals. Which means a very important thing. Adam, the human being, was superior to the animals all along. Right? I mean, Adam and the animals were not in the same league. Nevertheless, they were not relinquished to him until something practical, real happened that showed that they are subservient to him, that they're dependent on him. This was when Noach saved the whole world. So that it became a reality. Everybody could see, everybody experienced it, that the world existed only on account of Noach. So at that stage, we have defined, we have shown even a greater thing in the world. Whereas before we showed that the world is not just a creation. The first 5 days, the world was just a creation, just entities. This is what's called Mila Dehevdieta. I'm showing you that I have a lot of means, a lot of resources. But what is the point? Then, on the 6th day, we said, oh, there is more thought to it. There is more meaning to it. There is a purpose. There's a unity. There's a structure to it. It's not just an existence. Then came the next stage in Noach's days, as it says in the Pasuk, Yerek Esav Nasati Lechem Eskoil. Just like grass, I gave you. The Hashem said to Noach, Yerek Esav. Just as I relinquished everything in the world, all Yerek Esav, all greens, all plant, all vegetation to Adam, I'm relinquishing everything to you. So this gave the world even a higher perspective. Because now we are coming to really distinguish in terms of true value. The true value. The human being, the odd Noach, versus the animal. It's not the same thing. True, they are alive, but they don't have a purpose in life. They don't recognize. They don't have avodas Hashem. They don't have the human quality. They don't have the intellect. And now, this was clearly established in the world as a principle. Not just the fact is that Noach is different than the animals. It was established as a principle. It elevated the world to a completely new height. And what is essentially this height? That there could be a big world. And it's very powerful and it's a lot of resources. What is its value? What is its ultimate value? Its ultimate value is the intellect, is the human quality. This little human quality, the spiritual quality, supersedes everything all the power in the world. There is the lion, there is the tiger, there is the elephant, there are huge animals that are much bigger and more powerful than the human being. And a little child can go and lead powerful animals, and they listen to him. Because a new quality was revealed. That the intellect, the human intellect, as fragile as it may be on a physical level, is really the center, is the most powerful thing in the world. And for a human being to bow down, so to speak, I don't mean bow down in terms of worship, but in terms of feeling inferior to an all-powerful animal is totally out of line. Physical power is no longer the reality, the value of the measure of the world. This, in effect, as I said, it elevated the perspective in the whole world. It wasn't just, okay, now you can eat animals. The whole perspective. The world now acquired a spiritual quality rather than a physical quality. It's measured in terms of a spirit, of the power of the mind, the human quality. This, it was true in terms of what Hashem has actually imbued into the world. And this is part of the creation. Hashem created the world through the process of the Mabul, of the flood and so forth. Yet, the human being himself had nothing to hold him up. In other words, yes, he had the intellect, but he himself, with his intellect, this is what happened in times, throughout the ages, even after Noach till Avram Avinu, where the world was replete with Avodah Zarah. What was Avodah Zarah? Avodah Zarah was that the human being forgot what Hashem had decreed, that the human being is superior to everything in the world, and that everything is for him. And he fell down to the natural world, and worshipping the natural forces, worshipping the sun and the moon and the mazolis and all kinds of different physical powers. It took Avram Avinu, enormous spiritual struggle and intellectual struggle to break through this whole darkness, and to see that no, the sun is not the power of the world, the moon is not the power of the world, the stars are not the power of the world. I'm sure you heard about this. Avraham Avinu simply went through the whole intellectual process alone until he broke through and he recognized that there is a much greater thing in the world. The reason this was possible, this kind of fall down, this kind of descent was possible, from the time when it was the Mabul, when Hashem relinquished everything to Noach, and then fall down like this into Avodah Zarah, was due to the fact that there was not really a godly presence in the world. It was relinquished to the human being, and the human being was dependent on his intellect. And if his intellect didn't hold him up, he would fall down. And what would he fall down to? He'd fall down to the physical world. Like I mentioned before, the Avodah Zarah meant people bound to the sun and to the moon and to the stars and to the mazoles, the various planets. People bow to all kinds of natural forces. The Jewish people ended up finally in Mitzrayim, and what was the goddess of Mitzrayim? The Nile River. This is what they bowed to, because the Nile River would overflow in the right time and would irrigate their land. Therefore, the Nile River is what supplied them with their food. And this was the great intellectuals bowed down to the Nile River. This was their source of strength. This is what it means, that the intellect, the human intellect itself, is just not enough to hold him up. You can fall down to below the animal level. Then came the last stage, and this is in effect the last and final stage in the process of creation. Literally, this is the last and final stage in the process of creation, and that is Yetzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah. Because the Gemara actually says that the creation was completed at the time of Matan Torah. Up until that time, up until Matan Torah, the world was still shaking. It was not a real entity. It was not for real, as we saw the history. That people fell down to nothingness. And that people fell down to nothingness, there's no point, there's no real value to the world. There's no point. By Yetzias Mitzrayim, followed by Matan Torah, this actually completed the process of creation. It solidified the creation. And what was the process? What were the steps? Just as in a time of Noach, where the entire world, including the animals, were then reunited and given over to Noach, was preceded by a Mabul. Matan Torah was preceded by the Shibut Mitzrayim, by the Eden going through Mitzrayim. Now, there's one principal difference between what happened at the Mabul and what happened by Mitzrayim, by Yetzias Mitzrayim. By the Mabul, the whole world went through the Mabul. Because the effect of the Mabul, which ultimately meant, as we said, that it established the human being as the supreme ruler, the supreme king, the supreme entity in the world, because of his intellect, because he's a human being. This, every human being was able to relate. Everybody was able to see that human being is superior to the animal. But what had to be what was accomplished by Yetzias Mitzrayim, this was uniquely a Jewish thing, because the inyan that had to be revealed, had to be accomplished at Yetzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah, that pertained only to the Jewish people, and only they were capable of relating to it. As the Gemara tells us, that actually Hashem offered the Torah to many other nations. And they all refused to receive the Torah. What's in this allegory? What does it mean? They all refused to receive the Torah. What's the principle behind it? So it says that the Ishmaelim didn't like one aspect of the Torah, the Bnei Yosef didn't like another aspect of the Torah. But what's the principle behind it? Because ultimately, how did we merit to receive the Torah? Because he said Na'aseh v'nishma. What does Na'aseh v'nishma mean? Everybody knows these words? Na'aseh v'nishma, that by Matan Torah, right before Matan Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu came to the Yidden and he said to them, I'm going to give you a Torah. And Yidden responded that everything Hashem says, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen. And what is the principle in this? The principle in this is that Yidden were prepared, they were the only nation capable of being subservient to Hashem Himself, and to recognize not just that the human being is the supreme ruler in the world because of his intellect, but that really that the presence of Hashem in the world, this is what makes the world into a world. They relinquished everything, their own whole mitzias, even their intellect, because they said Na'aseh v'nishma, which means they're relinquishing their intellect to Hashem, to God. And this was only the Jewish people were capable of that. This is why the other nations all refused the Torah. Because the other nations are all ready to accept intellectual values, emotional values, but not to relinquish their mitzias, their own pride to Hashem. That Hashem is the real ruler of the world, the real presence in the world. And this is how Yetzias Mitzrayim prepared and brought this to the fore. Because up until Mitzrayim and Yetzias Mitzrayim, even though the truth was the same, as we said before the Mabul also, before the flood also, the truth inherently was the same. But the recognition in the world didn't exist. You didn't see the godly presence actually active, taking place in the world. Because essentially you saw a natural world. You had to be a great thinker and philosopher to understand that this natural world had a creator, like Avraham Avinu did. But practically speaking, you didn't see it. Up until the last minute, the Egyptians worshipped the Nile. And all other nations worshipped their gods, whatever they were. By Yetzias Mitzrayim, what took place is the following. You all know that in the time of Mitzrayim, when Eden were subjected to the bondage of Mitzrayim, they were subjected to extreme bondage. to whatever extent you learned about it, extreme bondage means simply that in effect they lost every vestige of personal identity. Their lives were totally worthless. The Egyptians treated them in every which way they pleased. So this is a tremendous pain and tragedy, and the Egyptians were punished for it. But the point is, this is what created the new stage in the and this is what we're about, the new stage in the creation in the world. That when there was Yitzias Mitzrayim, coming out of Mitzrayim, it wasn't merely that there was a people subjected and Hashem took him out of Mitzrayim. That wasn't the case. The case was there was a non-people because they were so subjected there, they were not a non-entity. And they were taken out, so they were made into an entity by being coming out of Mitzrayim. They were born into a nation, a new creation, effectively. So therefore, the Yidden, the Jewish people, actually experienced firsthand, through their own lives, through their own existence, the presence of Hashem in the world. They no longer knew it from history or from their intellect. They were made anew, and they were made anew by Hashem, but in the process that they themselves were part of it. They themselves have experienced and witnessed. And what did this accomplish? This accomplished, as we said, the completion, the highest level that the creation could reach. When did the creation become real? The first moment, the first few days of creation, it was just a haphazard entity, purposeless. Then it reached a point of some meaning, of some coordination through automation. Then it reached even a higher level coordination of the whole world was coordinated through Noah, which established the intellect, the human being, of some meaning to the world. But it's still only in the world, a worldly thing. It didn't really give the world a true reality, a godly reality. At Yitzias Mitzrayim, it gave the world a godly reality. Not a worldly reality, but a godly reality. It says, yes, the world is a creation. It's a physical creation. But in truth, this physical creation represents godliness. But what does it mean, practically speaking? When Hashem told Odom Orishe, all the vegetation that I created is yours. As we said, this transformed the creation to a new level. This new level, besides what we explained in general terms, more specifically, this new level meant that do not think for a moment that the tree is producing its own thing for its own purposes. You should know that the apple tree is producing an apple because Hashem told the apple tree to feed Odom Arish. So when Odom takes an apple, as we discussed before, he is getting it from Hashem, the apple, not from the tree. It's not a natural process. Because Odom needs an apple, this is why there is a natural process that produces an apple. It's not the other way around. There's a natural process that produces an apple and Odom can eat it. Just the opposite. Odom needs an apple, needs a fruit. Because he needs a fruit, that's why there's a natural process to produce it. I just want to finish this thing. The same now, after Matan Torah, is now translated at truly a much higher, a much more meaningful level. And that is that whereas up until Matan Torah, there was a natural world. And even though there were also intellectuals and so forth who knew the truth, where the world comes from and so forth, nevertheless, the natural world took its natural path. And in order to, say, produce vegetation for food, how did this happen? It happened because you till the land, you work, you seed, and you plow, and you seed, and then you water, and then you harvest, and you care for the produce, and it grows, and you have food. So essentially, you have food still in a natural process. All this is now redefined. There is still a natural process, but the natural process is now subservient to Hashem's word, to Hashem's presence. What do we say in davening, in Kriya Shema, every day? We say, Im shomea tishmiu mitzvaysa asher onechi mitzavayechem hayoyim. If you will listen and follow the mitzvahs that I give you, and then I'll give rain. And then you will be able to, you will harvest your food, your produce. And if not, there's not going to be produce. In other words, there's nothing natural about it. Even though there's a natural process, but the natural process represents the presence of Hashem in the world, not the other way around. Why does the world produce? Because Hashem wants it to produce. Because it represents Hashem's will. A complete reversal of the structure. And again, as I said, this is true only and exclusively for the Jewish people. Because the Jewish people were the only ones who were willing and ready and capable of accepting this highest and lofty and truth, that there is no Metzius of world except for the presence of Hashem. So for the Jewish people, the whole world is transformed completely. They have a totally different world than the other nations. Their world is top down rather than bottom up. And this is why in the Aseres HaDibros it says, I took you out of land Mitzrayim. Not I created the world. I created the world, this is just a world. This is the ultimate plan. Like we said, what is a king concerned about? The king is concerned about what is the message, what is the plan, what is the purpose. He's not concerned the means, because that's nothing. He's got means unlimited. Creation per se is not so to speak, an accomplishment that you would praise Hashem for creation. That's insignificant. The real significance, the real accomplishment in the creation is this transformation, is this miraculous transformation. That in this creation, in this physical creation, there should be cognizance of the presence of Hashem. And there should be a people that recognize this and live with this and carry this banner for thousands of years and bring Mashiach as a result of it. This is the principle of Shavuoss. Asher Yitzchak me'eretz Mitzrayim. Yitzchak me'eretz Mitzrayim means that the Rebbe took us out, as Chassidus explains, Mitzrayim means Mitzorim Ugvulim. He took us out. He freed us from natural boundaries, from natural limits. When he thinks in terms of his parnosa, he thinks in terms of his health, of his happiness, his well-being, everything that a person naturally needs in the world. His first thought is, where is the meaning? Where is the godly will? And if I follow through on Hashem's presence, Hashem's will, then everything will fall into place. The rain falls because we do mitzvahs. What is the connection? That's what the Yid is. What was your question?
I asked, but I'm sure if I'll find the answer, but maybe it's relevant to the answer. It's the first thing he said that when Hashem said that the apple tree is for Omarishan to eat from it, that was good. So isn't it we can also learn all this message of what's the world for and who is ruled by and like what's the message in the world from this fact itself. Because before that it was like apple tree making apples, maybe for its own benefit. But now since Hashem said to Adam that's for you to eat, it's already obvious from here that that's Hashem's world and it's His apple tree and He made it and
right. It's inherently it is obvious. Inherently, if you think into it like Avraham Avinu, but in a revealed way, it's not. In a revealed way, what's Odom Orishan? Odom Orishan is truly he's the intellect. He's the ruler of the world. And the same thing was by Noach.
So saying that's why he gets all the food from the trees because he's the best one.
He's the prize.
So
he's the prize creation.
So that's why people were compiled to whatever intellect is gonna say to them. So
Sorry?
That's why people were bound to the intellect, meaning to say that whatever intellect is gonna rule, gonna be. Yeah?
Yeah.
And that's why they messed up so bad.
Well, they messed up because they didn't follow the intellect. You know, the true direction.
Yeah.
But yes.
So what's changed in the Matan Torah then what happened? And now we have a people. You say that when
Matan Torah was a different thing. Matan Torah didn't say that the human being is superior. It had the presence of Hashem.
Right. So it was then by first time it wasn't a clear message. It was
It's not a question of a message. I explained. It's not just a question of a message. The message is there were many messages. The point is it was actually enacted in the world, actually made to be. In other words, Matan Torah couldn't take place if not for Mitzrayim and Yetzias Mitzrayim. Even though Matan Torah, Hashem reveals Himself and speaks to people and says, Hashem Elokecha, Hashem Baros Hashemayim Va'aretz, everything. But they still, in their own psyche, in their own feeling, feel themselves as entities.
Since Matan Torah saying after it's Mitzrayim, they perceived it as absolute as truth.
They lived it through. They actually experienced this truth.
So it's become a phenomenon in a world like this.
Right.
This recognition at Matan Torah and after that Hashem is the creator of the tree and it's not producing fruit on its own. This recognition of Hashem in the world after Matan Torah.
It's not just the creation, not Hashem who created the world. It's not just that Hashem is the creator of the world and the creator of the fruit. And Hashem gave it to Adam. That happened during the 6th day of creation. But that the tree produces fruit not naturally. It produces fruit because now Hashem wants it to produce fruit because this human being has done a mitzvah. In other words, it is now centered around a godly presence rather than a natural phenomenon that Hashem created.
but why was this only given to Yidden? No, I'm not saying like why was the Torah only given to Yidden? This recognition. Why was
Because it's recognition, the only even were capable of, were ready to accept it.
Oh, right. Okay.
Only even were ready to accept it and say, yes, we are completely, we submit completely to Hashem. Nasa v'nish. The other nations who just couldn't relate to it.
We say about tree, about apple, yeah, and we know we need to say thank you to God, yeah, because we know God has created this tree for us, yeah. What's my question? If I give this apple and I eat, it's my free choice or it's choice to God, because God is know what I need to eat. It's better. What is the choice? I have choice or not to eat this apple or not? You understand my question?
I don't really, but we are given free choice, and that's a rule. We are given free choice to eat or not to eat.
I can eat or I couldn't eat, yeah?
Yeah, of course. I never saw Hashem stop anybody's apple in his mouth. I really don't understand your question.
No, I ask, it's my free choice. Can I say it's my free choice? If I would like to eat this apple, I am eat. Or is God would like I need to eat this apple because it will be good for my gut, for my body? How I can understand this? It's my free choice.
Well, if I understand that, if you mean to say that Hashem wants us to eat the apple when it is healthy.
Yeah.
Yes, Hashem wants us to eat the apple when it is healthy.
And
it's a mitzvah for us to.
Okay. I think it's not my choice. I know it's the choice come from God. Yeah.
No. It is your choice to do the right thing. But the right thing is something that Hashem